Saul is my name. It's short for Solomon. You know Solomon, the king Solomon, the one who's long on wisdom and knowledge? Well, I'm a servant, and my master, he insists that he wants to call me Saul for short. I don't know if there's anything to that or not, but that's what he wants to call me, is Saul. I'm sure you're here tonight because you want to hear and talk about that evening. I'm going to tell you, like I said to the authorities, I don't know much. I don't know a whole lot. I was in and out of the room all night long, and I caught some of the things that he was talking about, and, well, I just don't know much about what happened that night. He seemed to be like talking in circles, the master who asked to be there that evening. He said, I'm going to be here for a little while, you're going to see me, then I'm going to go away for a little while, and then I'm going to come back, and then you're going to see me again. Maybe it had to do something with, he might have gotten word about the arrest or the attempt at arresting him when he would be in the garden. And then I remember him talking about vine and branches too. And so I told the authorities, I said to the authorities, hey, you know what? He talked about vine and branches. Maybe you should go to some kind of vineyard, because he was talking about trying to get away. I remember that. I also remember this whole thing started, it began on the first day of the festival. You know, when all the Jews and the people from Galilee, they would come down into the city of Jerusalem. And many of them would stay for the festivals. And the men, they had to come every time, 3 times a year for these festivals. And just like in Jerusalem, like all the times before, during these times, the Jewish homes were overfilled. More than one family. If there was a home that had 4 or 5 rooms, there was 4 or 5 families, one in each room. Well, Caleb and I, servants, it was our task, it was our job to go to each of the families and to give them a proper greeting and to give them proper etiquette. And so we are the ones that were the lowest on the ladder, and we were the ones in charge of washing feet and greeting the people. And so we did. And we went to the first rooms down on the first floor, but the second room, they were impatient with us, or we just weren't fast enough, because when we got there, there was already a servant at their feet, ready to start washing their feet. And that's when it hit me, because the one who was washing their feet was their leader. What's with that? The audacity. To having a leader wash the servants and the followers' feet. What's going on with that? What kind of topsy-turvy heading or following is happening with a master being a servant? I told Caleb right away, nothing good's going to happen with this at all. It's going to fail. If the leader doesn't know if he's supposed to be a leader or a servant, and he's talking about being a leader and a servant. In fact, he said, even though he was dressed like me, like a servant, even though he was a servant, he spoke with authority and power. And he said to Peter, I think the guy, the rock, Peter, the rock, the rock guy, he said, hey, you ain't gonna wash my feet. No way are you washing my feet. And then he said with authority, if you don't let me wash your feet, you and I are through. You'll have no part with me. The rock guy, he said, okay, go ahead, wash my feet, have at it. And he did. As he did that, Caleb and I, we didn't see that they needed much, so we refilled the wine, we gave them some more unleavened bread, and then we went away and we took care of the rest of the other families in their Passover meals. We came back later that night, though. We came back later that night, and we came back to bring them the bitter herbs to eat in their meal. But we didn't really have to bring bitter herbs. It seemed like they already had eaten bitter herbs. There was a place that was missing, so I thought I heard somebody leave earlier that night, and he's the kind of guy that's got his feet to the ground. So if you really want to know what was it all about, if you think there's a secret plan that was going on, he's the guy you should talk to. He would know. Check him out. And then the rest of the guys around the table, the rock guy, he looked offended. He looked like somebody had accused him of being a liar or something. And the rest of them, they were just dumbfaced, mystified, for sure unhappy. And we refilled. We gave them some dipping sauce and some more bread. And we left for a while again, and I didn't hear much that happened later. As I came back in and out of the room, the master guy, he talked a lot, and it seemed like he was talking in circles. I'm the vine, you're the branches. I am in you, you're in me, and we're in the Father. And I don't know what those guys looked just as confused as I did. It was like, what is he talking about here? And then I came in and out again, and the last thing I remember, or one of the things I remember, was he was taking bread, saying, "This is my body," and he took wine, he said, "This is my blood," and he passed it around the meal, and they had a meal. So I refilled the wine again. I gave him some more unleavened bread again, and I took off, and off I went. I didn't hear until a few days later about his arrest. They left that night. They sang a hymn, and they left. But I remember, again, sitting there and stopping for a moment in between serving the rooms and the families, and he talked as if he was some kind of emperor or something of the world, as if the authorities wouldn't be able to do anything to him unless he let them. He was talking about no more being masters but being servants, and then he talked about no more anger and hatred and swords, but love and forgiveness. And again, he said some hard things that I guess if you were a follower, they were talking in code. And, that reminded me that earlier that day, I thought it was quite peculiar that our master, he said, "Saul, tell Caleb to go to fetch the water." I kind of went, "What? You got to be kidding me, master. You're going to embarrass Caleb because, he can't hide in the crowd or anything. In fact, he's a guy. No guy carries water. It's always the girls and the women." And I go, "Why are you doing this to him?" He says, "I have a reason." And it kind of reminded me that maybe it was some kind of sign, because I'm telling you what, Caleb, he's tall. He sticks out in the crowd, a head above everybody. And you'd think there was some kind of signal, because it wasn't too much later that there was the knock on the door. Those two strangers came in asking to see the master. So he told me, "Saul, take him up to the upper room, show him where to prepare the Passover meal." So I did. I brought them straight up, and they did their thing, and I did my thing. That's when it started. But as he talked, I started to question, wonder. His voice, it just pulled you in. And his words were strong, challenging, but direct, inviting. And a few times I just go, no. He's just a crazy guy. This is a crazy guy, and it takes crazy people to follow him. But the next time I come in the room, I was drawn in again. And this last time, he really drew me in, because he spoke of joy. Joy. Like, he's going, I want my joy to be in you so that your joy can be in me and the joy can be complete. And then he was like, he wanted them to be happy kids. He wanted like a kingdom of happy children running around and filled with joy. What kind of craziness is that? This is a dog-eat-dog world. You got to fight for everything you got. You got to fight for everything you get. Hey, guys, this is the Passover meal. You were kicked out of the land of Egypt. They tried to kill you. You better stand up and take charge. You better grab a sword because nobody's going to help you. That's what I wanted to say. I was kind of like, well, I wanted to say towards him more than disciples, like, hey, guys, hey, followers, get a grip. Quit listening to this guy. He's speaking crazy. I mean, what kind of leader says he's a master, a king, but he's dressed as a servant? And then I started remembering what they said about him. That the lame would come to him and they would leave dancing. That the blind would come to him, they would leave seeing. That the mute would come to him and they would leave rejoicing and singing. And that death itself couldn't stop him. Nothing. And it made me start to think. Maybe a little bit more with my heart than with my head. It made me uncomfortable. As I retold my story to the authorities who were very interested. They were really interested in what Jesus was planning to do. And I remember telling them, he did talk about trying to sneak away, get away. He was going to go back to his father's and mother's home and there prepare a place for them. He was conniving on a plan to get away from the authorities, but how far did that get him? They caught him that very night. That very night they got him in a garden and they arrested him. And then the last thing I remember is, a few days later, I had some time off. I came back to the master's house, and I found out that they were, a bunch of them in the upstairs room. And they were in the upstairs room, and I was just angry, frustrated, just disjointed, upset. I started hearing them, celebrating, astonishment, all of a sudden there was feet pattering all over the place. There was yelps of joy and happiness, like they were having a party. I don't know what happened from that, but it seemed like joy. Joy despite the sorrow. Joy despite the suffering. Joy despite the betrayal. Joy despite denial. The joy that this master could not be stopped. Period. Nothing on earth or hell itself could stop his joy. I want some of that. I need some of that. I got to get me some of that joy. That joy that passes all understanding. The joy to look death in its face and to rejoice. The joy to deal with, I don't know if I'll ever end up ever not being a slave, a servant. Who would set me free? But the joy it would be to be set free Who could ever do that? That's what I seek. That's what I would want. That's what I would like to celebrate. Get rid of these servant clothes and rejoice. I wonder what happened to those guys. I never did see them again. But I did hear something faintly about resurrection. Resurrection and joy forever. That's all I know. I don't know much else. Have a good one.